In northern Nigeria, a disaster is unfolding, one that blends nature's wrath with human vulnerability. A dam collapse has unleashed severe flooding, leaving devastation in its wake. Over 1 million people have been displaced, their homes and livelihoods destroyed by the worst flooding seen in the region in over 3 decades. The Borno state's capital, Maiduguri, is now half submerged. While flooding is not uncommon in this part of Nigeria, officials are calling this the worst flood in a generation. Hundreds of thousands of people have been forced from their homes, seeking refuge in temporary shelters. Camps, originally meant to house those displaced by the long-standing conflict with Boko Haram, are now bursting at the seams, struggling to accommodate flood victims. Humanitarian agencies, including the UN's World Food Program, are providing aid, but the situation remains critical. The floods have only deepened the already existing crisis of food insecurity. Prices have skyrocketed, leaving millions struggling to access even basic staples. For over a decade, this region has been scarred by violence, insurgency, and displacement. Farmers have been targeted by kidnappings and attacks, leaving fields abandoned and communities in disarray. Now, with farmland submerged, food supplies are in peril, pushing the region into even greater distress. The search for survivors continues, but time is running out. Many families remain separated, desperately waiting for news of loved ones lost in the chaos of the flood. One mother recounts how her family was torn apart by the rising waters. She said, "I haven't seen my son in 3 days." She says, the pain of uncertainty clear in her voice. "The flood overtook us, and we were rescued by soldiers, but my son, he's still missing." This is a story repeated across northern Nigeria. Lives shattered, families separated, and many still missing as the waters refuse to recede. In Maiduguri, the situation is particularly dire. When the Aloe Dam burst, it caused widespread devastation, damaging homes, hospitals, and vital infrastructure. Emergency services have been overwhelmed as they try to cope with the sheer scale of the disaster. Authorities are also grappling with a growing health crisis as the sewage systems have been destroyed, raising fears of waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid. Contaminated water now threatens to unleash another wave of suffering. Amid the chaos, more than 200 inmates escaped from a flooded prison in the city. As walls crumbled and waters rose, the prisoners were being moved to safer locations. But during the transfer, 281 inmates fled. While some have been recaptured, the majority remain at large, sparking widespread concern among residents. At the same time, reports emerged that wildlife from Maiduguri's Sonda Kairimi Park Zoo, including reptiles and lions, were washed into residential neighborhoods by the flood. It's a stark reminder of how far-reaching this disaster has become. Maiduguri, once the center of humanitarian efforts to help those displaced by Boko Haram, now finds itself at the heart of the flood crisis. Relief materials have been sent from both the federal government and international donors, but much more is needed. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu visited the flooded region, promising swift action to assist those affected. But with hundreds of thousands displaced, the task is monumental. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization has warned that nearly 32 million Nigerians are at risk of acute food insecurity. With farmlands ruined and food supplies dwindling, the situation is growing worse by the day. Aid workers are sounding the alarm, fearing the possibility of cholera outbreaks in the overcrowded camps. This year's rains have exceeded all expectations, as climate change intensifies the severity of weather patterns across the globe. According to officials, more than 1.3 million hectares of land have been submerged in Nigeria, half of which is crucial cropland. The Nigerian government had warned of potential flooding earlier in the year, but no one could have predicted the scale of destruction that would follow. Vice President Kashim Shettima, during a visit to assess the damage, acknowledged that the severity of the flood had far exceeded any estimates. Neighboring countries like Cameroon have also experienced severe flooding, exacerbating the crisis along shared river systems like the Benue River, which continues to threaten downstream communities. The floods in Nigeria are not an isolated incident. Climate change is pushing weather extremes to new heights, and northern Nigeria is bearing the brunt. With roads and transport networks destroyed, delivering aid to those in desperate need is becoming a monumental challenge. Despite government pledges to find long-term solutions to recurring floods, aid workers warn that more needs to be done. Infrastructure is buckling under the weight of the disaster, and the immediate priority remains survival. As northern Nigeria grapples with this catastrophe, it is clear that the road to recovery will be long and uncertain. The flood is just one of many crises facing this region. Conflict, hunger, and disease all compound the hardships of daily life. But the people of northern Nigeria are resilient, enduring in the face of adversity. This is Flagnas TV, documenting the stories behind the headlines. As the situation continues to unfold, we will be here to bring you the latest from the heart of Nigeria's flood crisis. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel